Good. Okay, so that means we're all here. 20 foot.
Depends how big your feet are.
Okay, we'll start the meeting. I think the original intent was the meeting was to review some of the code issues we recommended. I'm going to say 4 months ago. 4 months ago. What's that?
Out there. Is that your phone, Tim?
So what? I gave everybody a copy. I guess more than that was done in May. We made some recommendations to the on bulk regulations to the village board.
Oh, right. Okay.
And in talking to the village board, they think the setback for the sheds, if you go, there's in that handout, and there's the last page is what we were proposing. And then really, we currently don't have a setback for accessory structures. And so that's what we added, accessory structures. And we said, for RV2, which is within the village proper, we said 7 feet for a side and 10 feet for a rear. And that really isn't, it's very hard to do when people have such small backyards. And so I thought we would change it, recommend changing it to a side setback of 3 feet. The reason I say 3 feet is because the building code demands 3 feet. As a fire, you can't have a wood structure within 3 feet of a property line.
Hmm.
That's a state building code. So I would keep the side setback at 3 feet. And I don't know how people know about the rear setback. It would have to be at least 3 feet. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if people can hear everything that's going, but Fred is saying that that 10 feet is much too large, too big in the heart of the village, that people don't have that kind of space. That's how I feel too. 3 feet is the building code. I think why this is coming up is finding that there's a lot of encroachment going on. I mean, major encroachment, and I don't think we can stop it, but I do think we can. I think we need to start when people get surveys. I know it's a big pain in the neck to get a survey. It's expensive, but maybe we got to do with a local surveyor, and he give us a discount for people if everybody goes to the same surveyor. Because nobody really, most houses in the village don't have surveys. So we're trying.
A lot of whether or not you have a survey depends upon the bank with which you did a mortgage.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to say it depends upon the bank. The banks look at Round Lake as a subdivision, not requiring a survey. Yeah, so most people who buy a house here aren't required to get a survey. I probably have in the office, I've collected maybe 60 or 70 surveys that people have had done in the village, but most people don't have one. And I don't want to make people get them, but I think that if they're not building so close to what they can believe is the property line, they have to get one.
We have to require the survey, and it's probably going to be more common than uncommon. The surveys are
so then it is what it is, I don't think, I think you're right, Fred. We're going to see that there's a lot of houses currently that are over the property line. that their garage is over the property line, or their front porch is over the property line. I don't think there's nothing we can do about that. All we can do is try to curb it in the future. Say, you can't, put that shed way back there. It's not your property, or part of it is not your property.
Well, way back when our first house in the village purchased in 1974, we moved in. When we had a survey done on that house, we found the porch was on village property, and we were required to buy the property from the village that was under the front porch. And I think the village charge was something like 50 cents a square foot, and we had 110 square feet or something we had to buy. But yeah, I would say that, you know, if a survey is done on property and the house is not on, not where it's supposed to be, there should be some requirement to correct it. And if it's buying property from the village, if it's buying property from the neighbor, so be it.
Well, the problem is that, especially if your kid can only buy my property all the time. There's one of your house, and I'm not gonna say anything. Move your house.
Yeah, well, as I said, so be it.
That can be a double.
Yes, it certainly could be.
And I think the issue comes up also, there's so much property in the village that's parkland that we can't buy. Nobody can buy it. And I think this came up with the house who wanted to close in the front porch on 8th Street, which borders a park, which is actually parkland. And they wanted to expand the porch, and it turned out the porch was on village property, in the road. So there was nothing, they couldn't expand it. The village said, no, you can't expand it. They never really came with a final decision on what, if she could act. I mean, this concrete porch has been there for 50 years, 60 years. Could she actually build on that, not enclose it? It turns out she decided to sell the house, so we don't have to deal with it.
I think Sandy Debus ran into she wanted some additional property, as I recall, around her house, and it had already been declared parkland, and so she was denied any capability of buying additional property.
Right.
But get off the bigger subject and back to what you were talking about. 3 feet, yes, and survey if necessary. Why not? But I also think that involved in that too, not only a 3-foot setback, but also coverage. Because if I've already got a small lot and I'm trying to squeeze on another structure, we ought to be also looking at, you're using up your yard with coverage now, and you should be also required to satisfy proper coverage, or at least ask for a variant for
Right.
coverage.
I think we list that. I mean, we have the coverage at 20% in RV.
That's true.
Yeah, RV2 is 20%.
Right, but all I'm saying is if somebody applies for putting up a shed, say, yeah, I've got 3 feet here, but I think, they've got to pass 2 hurdles, the 3-foot hurdle, which may be easy, but also a coverage hurdle, depending upon what kind of additional encumbrance. And the other thing, which I've mentioned before during the parking debates, is that I don't think a person should be allowed to put up a structure on a place that they're currently parking a car, or a car particularly, in order to use up village space for the parking of that car. You know, and you know, I'm probably not the one to complain about it because I have a sizable piece of driveway. And so it wouldn't affect me or the future homeowner of my house. But it really bothers me that we have a parking problem and exasperating that problem by saying, oh yeah, hey, put up a shed and stop parking on your own property. What? Well, I walked by coming to this meeting tonight, a car that's parked on the owner's property. The property has a fence around it. And if the owner decided to put a shed up, that car is, that owner would then be parking that car on the property. And I don't think it's proper that when people have the space to purposely give up that space because they can occupy proper public parking elsewhere. I mean, when somebody's parking on the side of the road on parkland and gets that piece of property plowed in the middle of the winter because the plow's going to plow that for them, they're getting service that I'm not getting.
It's not.
Tom, can you hear what Lance is saying? Your sound is not on, Tom.
I can't hear anyone in the audience, and Peter, I cannot understand you. I don't know how close you and Lance are sitting, but I'm sure if you were to move a little bit apart so you can take your mask off and we can see your face when you talk, we might be able to understand you. Others are having the same problem.
Can you not hear me, Tom?
We'll send you the information, Tom, for you to look at. We'll send you the information, Tom. You look at it for now. So the number of other little code issues, and mainly I want to talk about surveys, but Lance, you're right. I mean, people park, I hate to see cars parked on people's front lawns. You know, to me, that's like, can't you park down the street or, you know, I'd rather see people parking in designated areas than their own property. I hate seeing all the cars in the village. Because another thing we were talking about is coverage, lot coverage. And, you know, I just worked this out with Tom, and that when we talk about lot coverage, it's buildable lot. We look at if somebody has, it's available building coverage. If there's wetland on their property or if there's steep slopes on their property, that does not count. You can't include that.
Right.
So I have a handout that basically spells out what we were trying to accomplish. And I think the village board is looking for us to make recommendations.
Peter, where you are sitting right now is good. We can hear the audio clearly, but don't lean back. Don't do that because we can't hear you when you do that. It gets garbled.
He's tired.
You know, the village board was looking at something that dealt with the issue of of, of really surveyed, people having surveys where people have just expanded their lot. And I don't think people have things that happened 50 years ago, we're not going to rectify. But things, the two biggest culprits that have used village property are Lake Ridge and Leah's. They're the two, both had dumpsters on village property. I'm not in the mood to go chase them. So I'm more for, let's just stop it now and see what we can, unless it's obvious, or somebody comes in and wants to do something else, and we realize that they're part of their buildings on, when they finally get a survey, we realize they're cheating, we can rectify it.
Have either of them ever applied for a right to use or request to use that village property for that particular purpose? I mean, it seems that the village has some interest in successful business operations. And if the location of a dumpster is necessary and impossible for other reasons, it seems like the business operator should be able to request the use, perhaps a minimal fee to the village to maintain that use.
That makes sense to me. I mean,
Again, my own concern is the equity. If I keep the longest, I'm just keeping the land. Only regardless.
Do you have other alternative? And the suggestion I inferred from what Peter said was that Leah has no alternative to have a close by sanitary disposal dumpster and no private property to put it on.
Is that really the case?
no,
No?
it's not the case with either, they could put it closer to their building and they prefer not to.
And I can understand why.
Yeah, of course, I can too. I don't want to make it. I think what the point is to me is that all this is going on in the village, and I think, well, let's put an end to it by requiring surveys when people start doing stuff like this. You have to have a survey. That was my feeling. Yeah.
What's the matter with that? Someone sits on the obvious, someplace else on the private property is not business standpoint, also minimal issues. By the time that's issues that we control the situation.
I would agree with Alex. Can you hear any of this? Alex? Tim, could you come
No, I can't hear any of it. Any of the things they're saying in the audience.
Hold on, Alex. This decision would be based on a case-by-case basis, so that how we would do that would be simply based on, what's the options for the business owner, and what's the value to them, but also what's the, I guess, cost to the village in terms of where it is, how disruptive it is, what.
Brad, You have to get closer to the computer, Fred.
Way of decision based on.
Come closer to the microphone. Tim.
Have a decision based, simply based on
Okay.
all the pieces put together about, can we find a way of promoting the business, but also limiting the harm that occurs to the village and this, what it looks like, where it is disruption. But the important point is that it would be controlled by the village to say yes or no somehow. I know we probably have that now, but there's some process that is clearly defined, simply that these are the sort of the decision points that are made, and it's up to the village to say yes or no.
That's essentially what we're gonna
What's that?
That's essentially what we're gonna You're reporting an example.
Yeah, that was the bank's requirement that I buy that property.
Okay.
In the village.
Make it a village requirement.
As long as it's part of it, probably different. Part of it, it's different out.
I don't know if you got that, Alex, what he was saying, what Tim was saying.
I got most of it. Every time he kind of turned away, it was hard to hear. So I'll probably have to go back and listen to the recording.
Okay.
Right. Isn't there the case over here, in the small park area next to Ken Raleigh's house?
Yeah.
And where, even though that's declared parkland, the village gave a former owner of one of those houses permission to park on parkland next to the house. Whereas later on, I think a whole parking area on the park across the street was created, so I think it eliminated that need. But I believe that there was a request and granting of to someone using that parkland for parking.
Yeah, I mean, people use paper streets as parking all the time, and I don't think that's terrible because it keeps cars on the street. I'd rather see them on a paper street than on the street. So I'm going to sit down with Gary or the board and just review our document that we all have copies of that we put recommendation.
We're cutting those sideline setbacks down. That puts it real close. Well, it might be the neighbor's only piece of being that. We have a maximum height of 12 foot. That could really be quite obtrusive right next to it.
Yeah.
Should we consider reducing the height?
Yeah, we should. Yeah, make it 8 foot. I would think 8 or 9 feet. So I'm going to give this to Gary and the village board to take a look at. And I'm learning through this process that looking at the Morris Road, New York Avenue subdivision, at this time is going to be really difficult. I think there's a lot of interest in the village of people who would like to attend meetings. We're not Malta. We don't have a large community space with all kinds of cameras and things to. We're a small little village. We're not equipped to be able to have community meetings on this project. So I think we should ask the village board for a moratorium on construction until we're able to, again, not on all construction, but on things this is a major project.
They haven't submitted an application. They've not submitted an application.
Well, they have, but we haven't accepted it.
This is all just real form.
Right, I said to them that we would take a look to see if their application is complete tonight. And they said they will come, they were gonna be here, and they said, oh, and that, if that's the case, we'd like to come in February. Give you some time to look at it.
Do they have a letter? Do they have a letter from Mr. Asperti authorizing them to prosecute this application over his property?
They have a letter, which, Tom? I'm sorry.
For Mr. Asperti, who owns
Yeah.
who owns the, what we all think of as the end of New York Avenue. They can't build this project unless they own his land or they have a letter from him joining them in the application and asking and stating that they have permission to speak for him.
So we don't have that.
How can we move forward?
So, but I don't think, even if they came to us next month with that, how can we have a public hearing? I'm gonna ask for a full environmental impact statement. How can we do that without public participation? I think we need to be able to have the community room and the public be able to attend the planning board meetings.
Tom,
It's-
did you say they do or they do not have a letter?
They do not.
They do not.
That's,
I think the form given is the reasonable roadblock. We will not do anything until the paperwork that Tom says is necessary is available for the building.
they own it. What's the point?
If they do, but if you take a look at the map that they submitted, they identify his lot as a lot that he acquired in 2012. Since
Whoa.
that time, they've had litigation with him. And whether they have worked things out, I don't know, but obviously they haven't bought the property from him because of their own map reference. So the only way they can go forward is with his authorization to represent him in this application. I did not see it in the paperwork that I was provided.
Well, that was an email that I sent out to Peter was that, did we know what Andy's situation was?
I did talk to Andy and he said he will sell it to them. There's no doubt if they paid him $250,000.
Well, I knew he was gonna sell it, but I didn't know if the sale had been completed.
No, it never was. It's, so that he could just have to go and get another option on that piece of land and then come right back to us. And I really, they could do that in a month. And then it will be back here again saying, having these meetings and not have the public be able to voice their opinion.
But the other thing, Peter, is in the law, isn't there a pre-submission conference or not?
That was, yeah, that was basically what we were gonna do tonight.
So.
We could put that off to next
But
one.
that's I mean, just because it didn't show up doesn't mean we still don't do that when they do show up.
Okay, fine.
I mean, I looked over a lot of the paperwork and I was not very happy with it. Am I muted again?
You are. We've been hearing you through Mr. Sheridan's microphone. It would be easier if you unmuted though.
Am I open there now? Yeah. My green line's appearing, so I guess I'm broadcasting.
Yes, you're good now.
I'd like to comment on a question in the chat bar. So can we borrow Malta's space? Malta tried to run these combined meetings, half Zoom, half people in the room, and had the same problems that we're experiencing here tonight, where we can't hear everyone. We certainly can't hear anyone in the audience. And the last I knew, they had abandoned that and gone to an entirely Zoom meeting so that everyone could hear everyone else. And we didn't have the problem like right now. I can't understand almost anything Peter says with the face mask on. And he's got social distancing requirements, so I'm not criticizing, but it is a fact. I've missed most of what's been said here tonight. I think we ought to consider going to entirely Zoom meetings or have entirely public meetings.
Well, I've been involved in the Zoom meetings from the library board, and I find them, I mean, we're not, at the library board, we're not doing anything nearly as difficult in our discussions, but I find them very uncomfortable, not being able to see people and react and stop stepping over conversations and that sort of stuff. So that's why when the meeting was set up tonight, I should be here. But I am going to keep my mask on.
Can I speak or not? Am I allowed to speak? I'm not sure, Peter.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say, the real problem isn't in-person meeting or a Zoom meeting, it's when you combine them, as Tom said. We tried that on the village board, and once you have a group of people in a room, those on Zoom cannot hear what's being said, and then you get feedback too. So you either go all Zoom or you go all in person, and if there's any gonna be an audience, you really can't go in person, I think, at this time, till people are vaccinated. So I think at least every time we have an all Zoom meeting on the village board, we can hear everybody. It's not an issue really, and we can see everybody. But this mixture is terrible, as Tom said.
I mean, I realistically, I could see 30 people showing up for a planning board meeting on this project. Easily, 30 people. I don't know how we would handle that with a Zoom meeting.
Actually, Peter, we do the fire company around 6. So that's easier.
Yeah.
Is there a way to do this?
Look, the fire department is doing Zoom meetings and they're doing, it with how many people? 60? 60, and they seem to be working. Okay, so we'll try Zoom. But I guess what we'll do is on the, we'll do Zoom for, I guess it's February 10th meeting for the planning board where they would like to present. And we'll view that meeting as a sort of their application review meeting, and we'll go from there.
Do you want me to contact Scott Lansing and ask him whether he can produce that necessary letter
About the property ownership.
about Asperities authorizing them to prosecute this application?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I will do so.
We can
But
also,
the other
we
thing
can
is that
also
if we're
do the
gonna
presentation.
have a Zoom meeting, the Zoom meeting requires paperwork submission from the applicant. The applicant needs to supply us at least a week ahead of time to us all personally, the paperwork that we need to be seeing while we're having the meeting. I'm not going to be involved with a meeting where all of a sudden there's something that's being submitted on Zoom that we cannot all do at the same time.
Yeah, did you hear what Lance is saying? Lance is saying that they have to supply us with all the information to have a Zoom meeting, and if they have the Zoom meeting with paperwork that they haven't given us, it doesn't work. They can't do that. They can't supply us information at the Zoom meeting. We'd like to see it in front of us. A week
Okay,
before the
so
meeting.
what I will tell Scott is that he needs to reduce all of his documents, including his maps, to an electronic format, forward them to us and sufficiently in advance to be able to post it on the village website, as well as to circulate it to all board members and anybody else who asks us.
Right.
Electronic format does not agree with the law. There's supposed to be submissions in hard copy.
Yeah,
So
we would need, I would agree, we would need multiple hard copies for anybody who's interested in this Zoom meeting. It could be 20 copies of plans and all his documents.
we just got, for this meeting, we just got distribution of electronic copy, which means that I printed at my own expense on a volunteer board materials that they should have provided to me. And they need to do that for the next time we meet on this subject.
Out of curiosity, would it be possible to do, hard copies for the board members, but have the electronic copies for people who can, like, people in the village who would be interested in sitting in on this meeting? Because I don't think it's realistic to ask for like 50 hard copies of their documentation, especially when you don't know who's going to need it.
True.
Board members will need it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Other than board members, but still provide an electronic copy for the rest of us.
Who did not receive a hard copy?
Well, they all have them now.
Okay. So Lance, you're the only one who did not receive a hard copy.
Well, I think the meeting was set up to go, I guess, this week, a week ago or more, maybe 10 days ago. They said they would like to have this meeting. And Kim sent out electronic copies to everyone. Then we got in the office hard copies. I'm partially to blame. I should have called everybody up and said, come into the office and get a hard copy. They'll be available at the office. I mean, I've been sitting on the hard copies for a week. But we need to have, I would say, if this is what they're proposing to give us a month from now, then okay, we have hard copies. But any other documents that they want to include with that, like their site control of the Andy's property, they will have to give us hard copies of that.
Okay, I'm worried about Lance. Lance, you have a hard copy waiting for you in the office?
When this meeting was set up, we were sent digital copies, and I thought it was going to be an in-person meeting. And I mailed to Peter, I said, do we have hard copies of this? And I expected that when we arrived at this meeting that we would all get hard copies, which is fine. What I'm saying is that if we go to an all Zoom meeting, we still need to have hard copies of what it is that they're submitting.
Okay, all I'm trying to find out is whether there's a hard copy for Lance now sitting in the village office.
Yes, Lance has.
Oh,
And I picked
okay.
it up because I'm at the village office.
Okay, so we're now, what I will tell Scott is any additional paperwork, especially that letter from Mr. Asperti, needs to be hard copy to the board members, as well as provided in electronic format to be circulated and to be posted on the village website. Are we all?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there'll be a hard copy, and he will have to be able to, Lansing will be able to put up for everybody on Zoom exactly what he's presenting. So people not affiliated, anybody in the village can look and see. And there will be copies, a couple of copies in the village office for people to, if they need to have one.
So we'll have it posted in the back with maps and so forth, and we'll also have hard copies in the village office.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Okay, then we'll proceed with it. I mean, I've looked at it and found the major thing I found wrong with it is that they're claiming they have more buildable property than Blue. I had Blue do maps and showing steep slope, and they have, I forget what the number is. Let's say they say there's 9 acres of steep slope. Blue is saying there's 13 acres of steep slope. So they don't have as much buildable acres as they claim they have. And I find their maps to be very difficult to read as far as the slopes on the property. And they have to know that besides meeting the village code, they have to meet the village architectural standards, which are part, they have to meet as part of a subdivision. They don't meet that in their drawings. The drawings give us very little information. It's just all these 51 buildings stacked right next to each other. So I don't know, you know, and then I thought when we talked to them, I'd start talking about the comprehensive plan, which just does not meet what we said in our recent comprehensive plan for that. So I don't know how we take that to say, this is not what the village had in mind for this property. Yeah, so I don't know how we deal with that, to say, okay, you're not doing what we think the village voted on, what should be done with that property.
Peter, one thing that would be nice to have that I'm just lacking in perception is that with the proposed site, if they have a site with a couple of elevations that are very hard to see, and you can't discern how big is the house, any kind of square footage, what's the proposed bathrooms? Is it a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom? Because it's only a box little house.
I realize that, man, but
They don't have to have the drawings. I mean, just what is their idea?
according to the village code, they have to have at least 4 different types of buildings. They can't have more than 50% of the same style built. They can't, the square footage has to be no bigger than, I think, 24, 26. You know, there's limitations, and they don't meet any of that. They don't tell us any of that. They don't tell us
That's what I mean. There's no indication if you need to worry about water usage or sewer usage. Is
Right.
it a bathroom? Is it a 3-bathroom? Is it a 1.5? There's even if there was a list that they would give, it's a predominantly a 2 or a 3-bedroom with a spacing for X amount of, give more of a judgment. What is the personnel impact to the site at the finish? So it just got a lot of incidentals that just don't tell you. They just give you a project with a photograph page. It's all pretty much the same. So there definitely doesn't look like there's anything that changes much other than the styles of homes.
So I anticipate this is what next month's meeting is all about. They're gonna come in and we're gonna say, this is what we want. In order for us to proceed with this project, we need elevations. We need to know the square footage of the houses. We need to know what you're doing about water and sewer. We need to know about that New York Avenue needs to be a 60-foot road, currently a 50-foot road. We're gonna have to get easements along New York Avenue.
Yeah, because those roads are, the access roads for the entry to the project are really very narrow roads.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of issues that we would ask them to deal with at the initial meeting that I could see.
Yeah.
There's one issue I'd like to bring up and have the board members think about, and that is that there are 51 houses in this proposal, 20 of them in the center of the development face each other across a park, have sidewalks, there's a gazebo there. That's the sort of thing that we were looking for in our cluster development law. There are 2 lengths of 25 and 28 houses across the street from those that have no clustering elements at all. I'm wondering why, if you're going to have 4 rows of houses, why you can't have parks between the first 2 rows and parks between the 3rd and 4th rows. Then you have some aspect of that clustering, goals that we were trying to accomplish in our local law.
I would agree, Tom. I think the issue there is he's got to achieve a certain number of units to make this project possible, feasible, because of infrastructure costs. So if you can't get 50 units in there, it's not worth it. So he'll squeeze them in any way he can. Fred brought up another issue that we have is access access. When I think of New York Avenue, which would be the main access to this, it's a blind corner at Curry Road. You can't, you know, you're going to put 50 houses in there with the blind corner. That's not going to work. I think there's a lot of issues that.
But yeah, but that's why they named it the Morris Road Project, because they don't want it to think about New York Avenue. The other thing is that if you look at their EAF, they say, does this project have any impact on traffic in the area? Well, I would say Morris Road probably has 4 cars a day, and New York Avenue may have 6. And if you put in 50 houses, 2 cars per houses, I think it's going to have an impact. And they're saying no. So I think there's a lot of issues there, but I think the issue I'd like to start with is I don't think they're eligible for 51 houses or 50 houses.
I don't think so.
I think the math that they've done is wrong. They haven't shown that property is going to become community property. And if they're talking about hillsides with a 60-degree slope to them, I don't think we can qualify that as municipal property or parkland property. There's a lot that's wrong with this proposal. And that's why we need a preliminary meeting with them to say there's a lot wrong with the proposal.
Well, I think that once they have fully submitted their application, one of the things that this board should do is to require money be paid into escrow so that our engineers can do a calculation of how much steep slope there actually is, how much wetland, how much other constrained land there is. And the idea that they can, Lance, as you said, that they can have a publicly available space on not only steep slope, but also portions of that hillside that don't have any access to them, you know, little islands of land that perhaps are not quite steep slope. That's your public land, that's your public park land. I'm not sure that that meets the spirit of our law or the letter of our law.
So my intention was to tell them at next month's meeting that we'd like $10,000 placed in escrow for our attorney. We'd like to have that, if it goes below 5,000, for them to keep that escrow at 10,000. I mean, does that sound fair, Tom? I think that's what we did with Belmonte.
I think we should call our engineer and chat with him or her, whoever's going to be assigned to this matter, and ask them for an estimate. They'll give us a letter. That's typically done to justify the amount that's being asked for.
Okay, will do.
Tom, my background, I would say economic development is probably not very easy. Plans to both things that number one, they can do a lot of things. You guys know we had that concern. But then I think what I see is that 2 major developments that I'm guessing they're not anticipating or looking at it all tomorrow. One is the water. This is not going to be just an extension of a water. It's going to be some pretty sophisticated pumping plant, storage. Keep that area. I think we've not considered that, and we can probably multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars. The other one, probably the bigger one, that cost one, is the access. New York Avenue before you go. We're saying it's going to have to be something more than that, or whatever that's going to be within the property that may involve actually impact upon the front yard of the people's houses. But more so than that, more. I know Tom and I agree. Morris Road is not a road. Morris Road is a town road was annexed by the village in whatever 1958.
Hmm.
As such, Morris Road was called a two-rod road. It was 30 feet wide. And then that's going to be a real major property, a real major. And my guess is that they're looking to cut off the dollar, both of them, order and that's. They're going to say, yeah.
I don't know if you heard what Fred was talking about. No, you didn't. But Fred was saying basically financially, this project, when you look at the getting water there, pumping stations, generators, holding tanks, Morris Road, getting property, people's front yards on New York Avenue. You're going to have Morris Road is only a two-rod road, meaning that it's a 33-foot wide road. That's not going to be adequate for the fire department. You're going to have to combine property on. My guess is, and I think they're not stupid. I really think they're throwing this at us. My personal feeling is, so we'll buy it. That's my gut feeling. Yeah, I mean, I really have not thought this out very well. They have not thought
Well,
the process.
it's their job to convince us that they have. And we will ask them questions.
Yep. Okay, so that's our goal. We'll try to set this up for next February. I'll try to make some adjustments on the setbacks and give it to the village board. And I'll contact the engineer and see what kind of escrow we should ask for the developer.
And I'm going to add to my request for documentation, elevations, drawings of the at least 4 different types of structures that will be up there in some vague floor plan, so that we have some idea what is being proposed.
Yeah, I guess Ben brought this up before, was the size of the houses. Virtually every lot that they're showing on their conceptual plan is 4,500 square feet, different house styles, but I would like to get the house footprint so that we can explore the coverage on each of these lots that they're talking about.
Yeah,
So the elevations should have setbacks and coverage included with them.
Yes.
My guess, Tom, is that they're not aware of, if you look at our code, it's spelled out. It says that any subdivision in the village, if it's not a PDD, has to meet the architectural standards. So the village has the Village of Round Lake architectural standards that were approved in 2013 that they have to meet, meaning that there have to be different style houses. We approve the material that they use to build the houses with. I mean, it dictates the different styles that we're looking for.
Yeah.
I want to know what the impact of amount of people that our house might hold. That's another.
I think their cover letter indicates, I've read it once, that they believe that they're in conformance with the Round Lake Code. I may be mistaken in my interpretation of what they're saying, but I think that's what they believe.
I think they're also making assumptions. I think if you read what they're spelling out, they're saying that the Round Lake Code specifies 20 degrees for a steep slope. If you read the code, it says it's up to the planning board what this slope is. It could be 15 degrees. Other towns have 15 degrees. That it's up to us to dictate what the steep slope is.
Okay.
Yeah, as it is right now with some of those houses on that steep slope side, on the south side. My God, if gonna be in place there. They're gonna probably need some retaining wall work as well for their backyards or whatever you want to call them.
Trying to find, Peter, that section on architectural design standards being mandatory.
I can tell you, Tom, I don't know if you want,
In their letter, Tom, it
Okay,
says-
158-12D.
you found it?
Yep, 158-12 sub D as in dog.
Okay,
For all major subdivisions.
yeah. Yeah,
So I'll direct Scott's attention to that.
What's on the website, current regulation?
which is what?
What is on our website, the old website, is that the current regulation?
Yes.
So one thing I'd like to mention to everybody that we're probably going to end up exchanging a lot of email. And remember, all emails are official documents. So careful what you
Careful what you say.
If you want to communicate with me by email as a board member, put in the Ray line, confidential between attorney and client or something like that. And don't include anybody who's not on the planning board on the email.
So a one-to-one email, but not a community email.
A one-to-one email or an email just between the planning board, but including me.
Okay.
God, that would cover it.
Okay. Well, I think we're gonna try to pull this off next month. Gary, I'm gonna need a lot of
Bless you.
With that, my battery's running low, and I think somebody recommends that we adjourn.
Well, you should plug in your
I
computer.
know it's plugged in. It's telling me I have a low battery.
Oh, Peter, one other thing, if I'm going to require direct mailing of supplemental submissions, I'll need a list of each of the board members with post office boxes.
Okay,
I would just be happy with it going to the village. Well, the village office isn't open that much anymore. I guess
I
not.
think it's better to
Right.
have the direct
Okay.
mailings,
Direct US mail.
direct US mail.
Okay, you want us to email that to you, Tom, or?
I think it should go to the to our secretary,
I think I do.
and a list made of all contact information, telephone numbers, email addresses, mailing addresses, and then circulated to the members of the planning board.
Alex, do you have that information, Alex?
I don't have everyone's. I have most people's. Although I don't have PO box numbers. I don't have mailing addresses. I just had phone numbers and email addresses.
Okay,
We're
so
gonna need yours, Ben.
if each of
Yeah,
us email that,
I'll email her my address.
Okay.
By the way, before everybody leaves, is anybody interested in some information on getting a vaccination? Okay.
Are you offering information to someone?
Because I reserved a spot in vaccination down the road for 65 and above. And I did get an email where it brought me out to March, but I am scheduled for March. So I just want to share that. I can give you that email and you go to the site and find the time that is open. You just keep going down because for
Now,
full, you can't go in. Soon as it says visit, then you visit there and get your information in, and you can be included in the vaccination program, and you get your time slot set for right then and there, right on via web. So you're not trying to call somebody because you can't get through a telephone line.
no, you can't. I did that. I got an appointment for February 25th for the shot.
Well, I got it from March 18th, so it took me a little while, but I got it there. My wife got it. So this way I can pass the email to Kim and she can, forward it to all the others and if need be. But it's just a courtesy that I was trying to do.
Yeah. Thank
Please
you.
do,
Thank you,
please
Ben.
do.
No problem.
All right, we done?
We're done.
Motion to
You got it.
adjourn?
Adjourn it is.
Yeah.